Opening invocation, a sacred call to inner peace and humility in this moment. Take a deep breath and let the world around you fade into the background. Feel the stillness entering your being as you prepare to step into a space of reflection and growth. This is a journey inward where we seek not to conquer the world, but to understand ourselves. We begin with the ego, the force within us that shapes our thoughts, guides our actions, and often leads us astray. It speaks to us in whispers, convincing us that we are incomplete, that we must prove ourselves, that our worth is defined by external validation. But in truth, this pursuit of recognition only distracts us from what truly matters. True peace, true success, and true fulfillment are found not in the accolades or praise of the world, but in the quiet surrender to humility. It is in the moment of stillness that we can hear our truest calling, where ego's demands are silenced and our inner strength rises as we move forward together. Know that this path is not one of force or struggle. It is a path of awareness, of gentle surrender, where we learn to observe the ego and release its grip. Through humility, through the embrace of silence, we will find a deeper, more lasting success, the success that comes from being at peace with ourselves and with the world. Let us begin, not by seeking to be more, but by recognizing who we already are enough, just as we are. Chapter 1. The War Within. Understanding the ego. The ego is a force that resides within each of us, shaping our thoughts, decisions, and actions in profound ways. It is not merely a concept or an abstract idea, but a living presence that governs how we perceive ourselves and how we relate to the world around us. The ego is our sense of I, the identity we create based on our experiences, thoughts, and interactions, while the ego serves as a necessary part of our human existence. It becomes a problem when it dominates our lives, leading us to measure our worth by external standards, comparisons, and the validation we receive from others. At its core, the ego thrives on recognition. It convinces us that our value is determined by how much we achieve, how admired we are, and how successful we appear to others. The ego feeds on the praise of others, seeking constant affirmation that we are enough, that we are worthy. It makes us believe that our success is measured by the accolades we receive, the competition we win, and the acknowledgement we gain from the world. However, while the ego leads us to seek external recognition, it does so at the cost of our inner peace. The more we chase external validation, the more disconnected we become from our true selves. The ego's pursuit of validation often results in feelings of emptiness. No matter how much we achieve or how many accolades we accumulate, the ego is never satisfied. It always wants more, and in the process, it traps us in an endless cycle of seeking and striving, leaving us discontented and restless. True fulfillment and peace do not come from the ego's pursuits. They come from within, from understanding who we truly are beyond the masks we wear and the roles we play. When we are consumed by the ego, we define ourselves through our successes and failures, and our worth becomes dependent on what others think of us. The ego's need for validation creates a fragile sense of self, constantly shifting with the tides of praise and criticism. It's only when we let go of the need to prove ourselves to others that we can find a deeper sense of peace. The ego's influence is subtle, often hidden beneath the surface of our daily lives. It is present in our reactions to others, in the judgments we pass, in the need to be right, and in the competition we feel with those around us. It shows up in the way we measure our success against others, the way we feel threatened by the achievements of those around us, and the way we seek attention and recognition for our work. When we are driven by the ego, we are focused on what others think of us, what we can gain, and what we can achieve. We measure our worth based on external factors, believing that the more we accomplish, the more valuable we become. Yet, this pursuit of external success is fleeting. The ego's hunger for praise can never be truly satisfied because it is based on comparison and the desire to be better than others. The more we feed it, the stronger it grows, and the less content we become. The ego constantly demands more, pulling us further away from the peace and fulfillment we seek. Recognizing the ego's influence is the first step in breaking free from its grip. To understand the ego, we must first become aware of its presence. In our lives, the ego is not always loud or obvious. It often operates subtly, influencing our thoughts and behaviors without our conscious awareness. It shows up when we react defensively to criticism, when we compare ourselves to others, when we seek recognition or approval, and when we measure our success based on external validation. These are all signs that the ego is at work, driving us to seek more and to prove ourselves. To truly understand the ego, we must observe it with a sense of detachment. We need to recognize when it is influencing our actions and thoughts, and we need to make a conscious choice to step back from its grip. This requires a shift in perspective, one that moves us away from the desire for external validation and toward a deeper, more authentic understanding of ourselves. This process begins with self-awareness. We must become conscious of the ego's influence in our lives and observe it without judgment. It is not about suppressing the ego, but about understanding it and recognizing when it is controlling us. By doing so, we create space for our true selves to emerge, those parts of us that are not defined by achievement, comparison, or recognition, but by authenticity, purpose, and inner peace. When we shift our focus away from external validation, we begin to live a life driven by purpose rather than ego. Instead of seeking recognition, we focus on the process of growth, learning, and contribution. We find fulfillment in doing the work for its own sake, not for the praise or accolades that may come with it. This shift allows us to move away from the constant pursuit of approval and instead embrace the quieter, more meaningful work that aligns with our deepest values and purpose. The ego, while a natural part of our human experience, often leads us astray when we allow it to dictate our thoughts, decisions, and actions. But through self-awareness and understanding, we can learn to observe the ego's influence without letting it control us. By shifting our focus from external recognition to internal growth, we can create a life that is grounded in authenticity, peace, and fulfillment. This is the path to true success, one that is not driven by ego, but by a deeper connection to our true selves. As we continue this journey, we will explore ways to further detach from the ego and live in alignment with our higher purpose. This process is not about eliminating the ego, but about recognizing when it is at work and choosing a path that leads to lasting peace and fulfillment, beyond the fleeting validations of the world. Chapter 2. Aspire to learn, not to win in a world obsessed with victory, success, and recognition. It is easy to fall into the trap of measuring our worth by how much we achieve, how much we accumulate, and how many accolades we receive. The ego thrives in a competitive environment. It tells us that we must always be winning, that our success is defined by how we measure up against others. It tells us that if we are not at the top, we are somehow less than. But this constant pursuit of victory, driven by the ego's need for validation, leads us away from a deeper, more meaningful success, one rooted in growth, learning, and personal development. When we focus on winning, we shift our focus from the internal journey to the external result. Winning becomes the end goal, and everything else the process. The learning, the improvement, becomes secondary. The ego is satisfied with the prize, the acknowledgement, and the praise that comes with victory. It thrives in the realm of competition, constantly comparing itself to others, seeking recognition, and measuring success in terms of who comes first, who is best, and who is most admired. However, the pursuit of victory for the sake of winning is a hollow one. In chasing success, we lose sight of the deeper purpose behind our actions. The true purpose of any endeavor is not to triumph over others, but to learn, to grow, and to become better versions of ourselves. When we focus solely on winning, we set ourselves up for disappointment. We define our success by external factors, and the moment we fall short of our expectations, we feel inadequate, defeated, and unworthy. The ego is never satisfied with winning, for it always seeks more. The key to true success lies not in winning, but in the pursuit of knowledge, learning, and improvement. When we shift our focus from winning to learning, we release the grip of the ego. We stop measuring our worth by comparison to others and begin to measure it by our own progress and growth. This mindset frees us from the endless chase for external validation and allows us to find fulfillment in the journey itself, not just in the end result. This shift in perspective is not always easy. The ego, conditioned by society, wants us to be the best, to outdo others, and to seek constant recognition. It tells us that we must succeed at all costs, and that our value is determined by our external achievements. But the truth is that learning, not winning, is the path to true success. By focusing on the process, on growth, and on mastery, we shift our focus inward, where true fulfillment resides. Learning is a never-ending journey. It is not confined to a specific goal or outcome, nor is it defined by how we compare to others. The journey of learning is personal and infinite. There is always more to know, more to explore, and more to understand. When we adopt a mindset of lifelong learning, we free ourselves from the limitations imposed by the ego. We embrace the idea that success is not a destination, but a continuous process of growth and self-improvement. In this process of learning, we must also embrace the idea of failure. The ego fears failure, for it sees it as a threat to its identity and status. But failure is an essential part of learning. It is through failure that we gain insight, wisdom, and strength. Failure is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced as a stepping stone to success. When we view failure as an opportunity for growth, we shift our perspective from one of fear and competition to one of openness and learning. This mindset requires us to detach from the need for external approval. When we seek recognition and praise, we are looking for validation outside of ourselves. We are dependent on others' opinions to define our worth. But when we shift our focus to the internal process of growth, we no longer need others' approval to feel successful. Our success is determined by our own progress, our own commitment to learning, and our own dedication to becoming better versions of ourselves. Aspiring to learn, not to win, means finding fulfillment in the journey, not in the end result. It means valuing the lessons we learn along the way, the growth we experience, and the wisdom we gain. It means embracing the process of becoming, rather than the pressure of achieving. This mindset frees us from the ego's demands and allows us to live a life aligned with our true purpose, where success is not defined by comparison or external validation, but by personal growth and inner fulfillment. In the end, true success is not measured by what we achieve in the eyes of others, but by the person we become in the process. It is about the growth we experience, the lessons we learn, and the ways in which we evolve. This is the success that endures, not the fleeting applause or recognition, but the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing we are always growing, always learning, and always becoming who we are meant to be. Chapter 3. The Role of Humility in Personal Growth. Humility is a virtue often overlooked in a world that praises power, competition, and individual achievement. In a society that celebrates the loudest voice, the fastest runner, and the most visible achiever, humility can seem like a weakness, a trait that hinders progress and success. But in truth, humility is not about diminishing ourselves or rejecting our worth. It is about recognizing that our success, our abilities, and our achievements are not solely of our own making, and that there is always room for growth, learning, and improvement. Humility is a powerful force that unlocks our potential by aligning us with our true purpose, free from the distractions of ego and comparison. The ego, in its quest for validation and recognition, convinces us that we must always be more successful, more powerful, more admired. It pushes us to compete, to compare, and to prove ourselves. In the pursuit of these external markers of success, we often lose sight of the deeper purpose behind our actions. True success, however, is not about outshining others or being seen as superior. It is about personal growth, aligning with our highest self, and contributing to the greater good. Humility provides us with a sense of groundedness and clarity. It allows us to acknowledge our strengths and weaknesses, not from a place of shame or pride, but with acceptance. When we act with humility, we are no longer driven by the need to prove our worth to others. Instead, we are guided by an inner knowing that our value is inherent and not dependent on external validation. Humility allows us to focus on the process of learning, growth, and service, rather than on the fleeting rewards of external recognition. The practice of humility is essential for personal development, because it enables us to embrace our imperfections. Humility invites us to recognize that we are not finished products, but works in progress. When we humble ourselves, we open ourselves to the possibility of learning from others, from our experiences, and even from our failures, rather than seeing mistakes as setbacks. Humility allows us to view them as valuable lessons that contribute to our growth. Humility also fosters self-awareness. It encourages us to reflect on our actions, motivations, and the impact we have on others. When we are humble, we become more attuned to the needs of those around us and more compassionate toward their struggles. We realize that our success is not just for us. It is a collective experience that can uplift those we encounter. This understanding allows us to act with grace and integrity, recognizing that true success is not defined by how much we have, but by how much we give and how much we contribute to the well-being of others. In a world that values competition and individual achievement, humility is often seen as counterproductive. We are taught that to succeed, we must be assertive, aggressive, and dominant. However, humility is not about shrinking ourselves or stepping aside. It is about standing firmly in our truth without needing to overshadow others. True humility does not diminish our strength. It enhances it by allowing us to operate from a place of balance and inner peace. Humility allows us to stay focused on our journey, free from the distractions of competition, comparison, and ego-driven goals. When we practice humility, we begin to let go of the need to compare ourselves to others. The ego thrives in competition, constantly measuring our worth against others. But when we embrace humility, we free ourselves from this constant comparison. We recognize that each person's journey is unique, and our worth is not dependent on how we measure up to others. Instead of striving to be better than others, we strive to be the best version of ourselves, grounded in authenticity and purpose. Humility also allows us to be open to criticism. The ego is defensive and often reacts to feedback with defensiveness or resentment. But humility invites us to listen, to learn, and to grow from constructive criticism. Rather than seeing feedback as a threat to our identity, we learn to view it as a tool for improvement. Humility teaches us that we are always evolving and that growth comes from acknowledging our limitations and being open to learning from others. One of the greatest gifts humility offers is the ability to lead with integrity. Leadership, at its core, is not about authority or control. It is about service. True leaders inspire others not through force or dominance, but through example, compassion, and humility. When we lead with humility, we recognize that our role is not to dominate or control, but to guide, support, and empower others. Humility allows us to see the potential in others and to help them achieve their goals without seeking personal gain or recognition. Humility also fosters resilience. The ego, when threatened, becomes fragile and defensive. It seeks to protect itself from failure, criticism, or perceived loss. But humility teaches us to embrace failure as part of the process. Humility helps us stay grounded during times of hardship, knowing that setbacks are opportunities for growth. When we approach challenges with humility, we remain focused on the long-term journey, understanding that success is not about avoiding failure, but about learning from it and continuing to move forward. As we walk the path of personal growth, humility is the compass that guides us toward true success. It is the foundation upon which authentic achievement is built. Achievements that are not driven by the need for recognition or praise, but by the desire to grow, contribute, and serve. Humility opens the door to deeper wisdom, stronger relationships, and more meaningful contributions to the world. It reminds us that true strength comes not from dominance, but from the quiet confidence that arises when we live in alignment with our highest values. True humility does not mean diminishing ourselves or our accomplishments. It means recognizing our worth and the worth of others without the need to compare, compete, or seek validation. It means standing in our truth, free from the ego's demands, and embracing the journey of growth with grace, acceptance, and gratitude. Chapter 4. The Pitfalls of Pride and Recognition. Pride is a powerful force that can quickly become a trap, leading us to pursue success for the wrong reasons. In a world that constantly tells us to achieve, be seen, and stand out, the ego latches onto pride as a measure of worth. It tells us that our value is determined by how much recognition we receive, by how many people admire us, and by how much we stand above others. Yet, despite the allure of pride, it is a fleeting satisfaction, one that does not bring lasting fulfillment. Instead, it often leads to a cycle of discontent, comparison, and emptiness. Pride is not inherently negative. In fact, healthy pride can serve as a source of confidence and self-respect. It is the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you have done your best, from valuing your work and achievements. However, when pride becomes inflated, When it shifts from a quiet inner knowing to a loud, demanding force, it can lead us astray. It begins to feed the ego, encouraging us to seek recognition and validation from the outside world, rather than from within. The pursuit of external recognition is an exhausting journey, one that can never fully satisfy the ego's insatiable desire for more. The problem with seeking recognition is that it is always temporary. No matter how much we achieve or how many accolades we receive, the hunger for validation is never truly quenched. The more we chase recognition, the more we feel empty when it fades or when we don't receive it at all. The ego, driven by pride, convinces us that we must always be seen, that we must always be acknowledged for our efforts. It tells us that without recognition, we are nothing in truth. The need for external recognition undermines our sense of inner worth. When we define ourselves by what others think of us, we are constantly at the mercy of their opinions. We become slaves to praise, always dependent on the approval of others to feel good about ourselves. This dependence on external validation leads to fragility in our self-esteem. If we are constantly seeking recognition, we are never truly at peace with ourselves. We rely on the shifting tides of external feedback to feel validated, and as a result, we are left feeling empty when that praise is no longer forthcoming. The key to transcending this cycle is to shift our focus from external validation to internal fulfillment. True success is not about how others perceive us or how much recognition we receive. It is about knowing that we are living in alignment with our deepest values, that we are contributing in meaningful ways, and that our worth is inherent and not tied to what others think of us. When we shift our focus inward, we release the need for pride-driven validation and instead find contentment in the work itself, in the process of growth, and in the knowledge that we are doing our best. A powerful way to cultivate this shift is by practicing detachment from the outcome. When we are attached to the outcome of our efforts, whether it be recognition, success, or praise, we make our peace and satisfaction conditional upon those results. However, when we detach from the outcome and focus on the process itself, we free ourselves from the constant pursuit of external validation. This doesn't mean we stop striving for excellence. It means we learn to find joy and fulfillment in the work itself, regardless of whether others recognize it or not. Detachment from pride and recognition allows us to experience true freedom. When we let go of the need for validation, we are free to be authentic, to act with integrity, and to pursue our passions without fear of judgment. We are no longer driven by the need to prove ourselves to others or to gain their approval. Instead, we act from a place of genuine purpose, knowing that our worth is not dependent on external recognition, but on the alignment of our actions with our values and beliefs. The pursuit of pride can also distort our relationships with others. When we are driven by the need to be recognized, we view others as competitors, as obstacles to our success. We measure their worth based on how they affect our own standing in the world. This creates a sense of separation, where we see others as threats to our success, rather than as fellow travelers on the same journey. But when we detach from pride and recognition, we can see others as partners, collaborators, and sources of inspiration, rather than as rivals. This shift fosters deeper, more authentic connections and allows us to contribute to the success of others without feeling threatened by their achievements. Pride also distorts our ability to learn and grow. When we are attached to being right, to maintaining our status, or to receiving recognition, we close ourselves off to feedback and growth. The ego, driven by pride, resists criticism and avoids vulnerability. But true growth comes from the willingness to listen, to learn, and to admit when we are wrong. Humility allows us to stay open to new ideas, to accept constructive feedback, and to grow from our mistakes. When we are no longer concerned with protecting our pride, we are free to learn from every experience, knowing that our worth is not diminished by failure, but strengthened by it. Ultimately, the pursuit of pride and recognition can trap us in a cycle of dissatisfaction, comparison, and emptiness. The more we chase external validation, the more we disconnect from our true selves and our deeper sense of purpose. By shifting our focus from pride to inner fulfillment, we release the grip of the ego and open ourselves to a life of authenticity, growth, and peace. True success is not about being seen or admired by others, but about living in alignment with our values, serving others, and finding fulfillment in the work we do. The next time you feel the pull of pride or the desire for recognition, take a moment to pause and reflect. Ask yourself, am I seeking this for my own growth, or am I seeking validation from others? Shift your focus back to the process, to the deeper purpose behind your actions, and remember that your worth is inherent, not defined by external approval. True success lies not in what others see, but in how deeply you align with your true self and your purpose. Chapter 5. Obstacles are opportunities. Reframing challenges in our journey through life. Obstacles are inevitable, whether they come in the form of external challenges, such as financial difficulties, personal loss, or career setbacks, or internal struggles like self-doubt, fear, or resistance. Obstacles can seem like insurmountable barriers. The ego, when faced with challenges, sees them as threats to our progress, our identity, and our sense of success. It pushes us to avoid or overcome obstacles quickly, often leading us to act impulsively or defensively. Yet, when we view obstacles through the lens of the ego, we miss the opportunity they provide for personal growth and transformation. The truth is that obstacles, when approached with the right mindset, are not setbacks, but opportunities for growth. They are essential components of the path to personal development, self-mastery, and true success. Each obstacle offers us a chance to learn, to build resilience, and to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. When we stop viewing challenges as roadblocks and start seeing them as stepping stones, we free ourselves from the ego's limiting beliefs and open the door to profound transformation. The ego sees obstacles as failures. It tells us that encountering difficulty means we are not good enough, that we are unworthy, or that we have lost the battle. This narrative feeds the ego's need for perfection and control. It demands that we avoid failure at all costs, that we succeed on the first try, and that we never show vulnerability. But this approach limits us. It traps us in a cycle of fear, avoidance, and self-criticism. The ego, driven by the need for validation, pushes us to protect our image of success, preventing us from confronting the real challenges that will help us grow. When we embrace the mindset of humility and learning, we begin to reframe obstacles. We start to see them as necessary experiences, essential for our growth. Each obstacle brings with it an opportunity to learn something new about ourselves, to build strength, and to develop the resilience necessary for true success. Obstacles reveal our weaknesses, not as sources of shame, but as areas for improvement. They push us to confront our fears and face our limitations head-on, helping us to grow in ways that success and ease never could. The key to reframing obstacles is shifting our perspective. Instead of seeing challenges as things to be avoided, we learn to approach them with curiosity and openness. We ask ourselves, what is this challenge trying to teach me? How can I grow from this experience? What strengths am I developing by facing this obstacle? This shift in mindset transforms obstacles from threats into opportunities for learning, resilience, and personal development. For example, consider how great athletes train. They do not grow stronger by avoiding difficult workouts or challenges. Instead, they face each obstacle, each injury, setback, and failure as an opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. They understand that without these obstacles, their growth would be stunted. The same is true in our own lives. Without the challenges we face, we cannot reach our highest potential. In the same way, personal setbacks, whether in relationships, careers, or personal goals, for valuable lessons. When we experience failure, we often feel discouraged and defeated. The ego tells us that failure means we are not good enough, that we should give up, or that we have lost the battle. But failure is not the end. It is a part of the process. Failure teaches us what doesn't work, allowing us to adjust our approach and try again. It reveals our areas of weakness so we can strengthen them. Failure is a powerful teacher when we are willing to learn from it. Moreover, obstacles help us cultivate resilience, a crucial quality for personal growth. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, to keep moving forward even when the road is tough. It is built through facing challenges, learning to adapt, and developing the strength to keep going. When we approach obstacles with a resilient mindset, we understand that life's difficulties are not signs of defeat, but opportunities to build our inner strength and grow. Another aspect of reframing obstacles is recognizing the role of patience and persistence. The ego, driven by the desire for quick results, wants us to overcome obstacles immediately. It urges us to take shortcuts, to avoid discomfort, and to reach success as quickly as possible. But true growth takes time. The process of overcoming obstacles is not about immediate triumph, but about gradual progress. It is about learning from each experience, no matter how small, and building the foundation for lasting success. Patience, coupled with persistence, allows us to stay the course when faced with difficulties, knowing that each step, no matter how challenging, is moving us closer to our goal. As we confront obstacles, it is essential to maintain a mindset of gratitude. Gratitude shifts our focus from the difficulty of the situation to the opportunities for growth it provides. It allows us to see the value in the struggle, the lessons in the pain, and the strength in our perseverance. When we practice gratitude in the face of adversity, we open ourselves to the transformative power of obstacles, and we allow them to shape us into more resilient, compassionate, and capable individuals. Obstacles, when reframed, no longer hold us back. Instead, they propel us forward. They become the soil in which we plant the seeds of growth. They challenge us, teach us, and strengthen us. Life's difficulties are not the enemy. They are our greatest teachers, guiding us toward greater wisdom, strength, and success. As we continue this journey of self-mastery, let us embrace the obstacles in our path, knowing that they are not here to break us, but to make us stronger. Let us shift our perspective from fear to curiosity, from avoidance to acceptance, and from resistance to resilience. Through each challenge, we are becoming who we are meant to be: stronger, wiser, and more aligned with our true purpose. Chapter 6. Becoming indifferent to external praise and criticism. One of the most powerful ways to break free from the grip of the ego is to become indifferent to both praise and criticism. The ego thrives on the approval of others. It feeds on praise, recognition, and admiration. Similarly, it shrinks in the face of criticism, responding defensively or retreating into insecurity. The constant dance between seeking praise and avoiding criticism keeps us in a state of emotional instability, where our sense of self-worth is determined by the fluctuating opinions of others. The reality is that we cannot control what others think or say about us. People will always have their opinions, some favorable, others not. But allowing these opinions to dictate how we feel about ourselves leaves us vulnerable to the whims of others. Our happiness becomes contingent upon how others view us, and our self-esteem is built on a foundation that is easily shaken. To live in true peace, we must detach from this need for external validation, and instead cultivate a deeper, more stable sense of self-worth that comes from within. Indifference to external praise and criticism does not mean that we stop caring about feedback or that we disregard others' opinions entirely. It simply means that we no longer rely on these external sources for validation or self-worth. We learn to see praise and criticism for what they truly are: feedback, not a measure of our inherent value. When we are indifferent to praise, we stop seeking approval from others as a way to validate our worth. Similarly, when we are indifferent to criticism, we are able to hear it, learn from it if necessary, but not let it diminish our confidence or self-esteem. The ego loves praise. It sees it as a confirmation of our superiority and a validation of our actions. We feel good when others acknowledge our achievements or recognize our efforts. Praise inflates the ego, making us feel worthy, important, and accomplished. Danger of this, however, is that praise is fleeting. It is dependent on the opinions of others, and when those opinions change, so too does our sense of worth. In seeking praise, we become slaves to the judgment of others, constantly seeking external validation to feel good about ourselves. Indifference to praise, on the other hand, allows us to remain grounded. It helps us stay focused on the work itself, rather than the recognition we may or may not receive. When we detach from the need for praise, we are free to pursue our goals with authenticity and passion, rather than seeking approval. Our satisfaction comes not from the recognition of others, but from the satisfaction of knowing that we are doing meaningful work aligned with our values and purpose. Criticism, too, is something that often fuels the ego's defensive nature. When criticized, the ego feels attacked and diminished. It responds by either defending itself or retreating into insecurity. Criticism, however, is an inevitable part of life. No one is immune to it. The key is not to avoid or reject criticism, but to learn to detach from its emotional impact. Instead of seeing criticism as a personal attack, we can view it as an opportunity for growth and learning. When we are indifferent to criticism, we are able to listen to it with an open mind, without letting it affect our self-worth. We can hear what others have to say, reflect on it, and use it to improve ourselves without letting it define who we are. The ego thrives on defensiveness, wants to protect us from the discomfort of being wrong or criticized. But true strength lies in our ability to accept criticism gracefully, to learn from it, and to continue on our path without letting it derail our sense of self. Indifference to both praise and criticism is a form of emotional freedom. It allows us to act from a place of inner clarity and purpose, rather than being swayed by the opinions of others. We no longer seek approval or fear rejection. We simply do what we believe is right, aligned with our values, and in service to a greater good. This emotional freedom leads to a sense of peace and fulfillment that is not dependent on external factors, but on an unwavering connection to our true selves. This does not mean that we should ignore feedback or become apathetic to the opinions of others. Feedback, whether positive or negative, can be valuable for our growth. However, when we become indifferent to praise and criticism, we learn to evaluate feedback based on its merit, not on how it makes us feel about ourselves. We can accept constructive criticism as an opportunity to improve, and we can appreciate praise without letting it define our worth. When we let go of the need for external validation, we also release the pressure of perfectionism. The ego tells us that we must be flawless, that we must always win, always succeed, and always be praised. But perfection is an illusion. There is no such thing as flawless success, and chasing perfection only leads to frustration and burnout. When we become indifferent to both praise and criticism, we free ourselves from this impossible standard. We learn to embrace imperfection, to celebrate progress rather than perfection, and to be content with the process of growth. Regardless of the outcome, the path to emotional freedom is one of detachment, not from our goals, values, or purpose, but from the need for approval, recognition, and praise. We can still strive for excellence, work hard, and seek feedback, but we do so without tying our self-worth to the outcome. We can remain centered, grounded, and at peace, knowing that our true worth comes from within and is not dependent on how others see us. As we continue on this journey, let us embrace the freedom that comes from being indifferent to external praise and criticism. Let us remember that our worth is not determined by the opinions of others, but by our alignment with our true selves and our commitment to living authentically and with purpose. Chapter 7. The courage to stay silent in a world that is constantly moving, speaking, and demanding. The ability to remain silent is a rare and precious skill. Silence is often misunderstood. It is not simply the absence of sound, but a profound state of being that allows us to reconnect with our inner selves. The ego thrives in the noise of the world, in the constant need to be heard, to be validated, to be recognized. It fills the silence with distractions and self-promotion, seeking attention and approval at every turn. Yet, it is in silence that true clarity, wisdom, and inner peace are found. The ego is uncomfortable with silence because it cannot assert itself in the absence of noise. Silence requires us to look inward, to confront the parts of ourselves that the ego tries to hide. It strips away the masks we wear for the world and exposes us to the truth of who we are. In silence, we are no longer defined by external validation, opinions, or the need for recognition. We are simply present in the moment with ourselves. To stay silent in the face of a noisy, demanding world takes courage. The ego wants to be heard, to be seen, to have its voice echo across the world. It urges us to speak louder, act more boldly, and seek constant attention. But silence, when embraced with intention, becomes a tool for self-discovery and transformation. It is in these quiet moments that we gain clarity about our true desires, our deepest fears, and our truest purpose. Silence helps us strip away the distractions and reconnect with the inner wisdom that resides within us. When we stay silent, we give ourselves the space to listen to our thoughts, our emotions, and the world around us. It is in silence that we can hear the subtle whispers of intuition, the gentle guidance that directs us toward our highest path. The ego, always seeking external affirmation, often drowns out these quiet whispers with its incessant demands. But when we allow ourselves to be silent, We create this space for deeper understanding and insight. Silence also helps us cultivate patience. In a world that values speed and immediate results, silence teaches us the importance of waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right words, and waiting for the right guidance. The ego wants instant gratification, but silence asks us to be patient, to trust in the timing of life, and to let things unfold in their own time. In silence, we learn to trust that all things are unfolding as they should, and that we do not need to rush or force anything. Furthermore, silence allows us to cultivate humility. The ego often speaks loudly, asserting itself in every conversation, demanding attention and recognition. But humility is found in the quiet moments, in the willingness to step back, to listen more than we speak, and to learn from others. When we embrace silence, we open ourselves to the wisdom of the world around us. We recognize that we do not have all the answers, and that there is always more to learn. In silence, we also find the courage to confront our own discomfort. The ego thrives on avoiding vulnerability, on presenting a perfect image of ourselves to the world. But silence invites us to sit with our discomfort, to face our fears, and to accept ourselves as we are. In these moments of quiet reflection, we gain the courage to be fully ourselves, to release the need to perform, and to embrace authenticity. Silence helps us build the strength to accept our imperfections and to allow ourselves to simply be. The practice of silence is not just about withdrawing from the world or shutting out external noise. It is about creating a space for stillness within. It is about finding moments of peace and solitude, even in the midst of chaos. Silence can be cultivated in everyday life, through meditation, prayer, mindful breathing, or simply taking a moment to pause and reflect. It is about creating an inner sanctuary where we can reconnect with our true selves and find peace amidst the noise of the world. To embrace silence is to embrace our true selves. It is to let go of the ego's need for validation and recognition and to simply be present with ourselves. Silence is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of peace. It is in silence that we reconnect with our deeper purpose, find clarity in our decisions, and gain the wisdom to navigate the challenges of life. The ego may resist silence, but it is through silence that we find our truest strength and our most authentic voice. In the stillness of silence, we gain the courage to face life as it is, without the need for external affirmation or validation. We become more attuned to our inner wisdom, more aligned with our true purpose, and more at peace with who we are. Silence frees us from the demands of the ego and allows us to live with clarity, intention, and authenticity as we continue on. This journey, let us embrace the power of silence. Let us find courage in stillness, knowing that in the quiet moments we are reconnecting with our deepest self, and in this silence we find the strength to move forward with confidence, purpose, and peace. Chapter 8. Leadership through Service. Putting ego aside. True leadership is often misunderstood in today's world. We are taught that leadership is about power, control, and dominance. We equate it with being at the top, with commanding respect, and making decisions that shape the course of events. The ego, with its desire for recognition and superiority, often distorts the true meaning of leadership. It tells us that leaders must be the ones who stand out, who get the praise, and who are always in control. Yet, real leadership does not come from a position of power or authority. It comes from a place of service, humility, and the willingness to put others before oneself. The ego sees leadership as a way to elevate oneself above others. It feeds on titles, accolades, and the adulation of others. In the pursuit of these external markers of success, the ego distorts leadership into a quest for dominance, recognition, and control. But true leadership is not about gaining followers or seeking power. It is about serving others, empowering them, and helping them reach their fullest potential. True leaders understand that leadership is not a position to be coveted, but a responsibility to be honored. They lead not by commanding others, but by inspiring them, by showing them the way, and by supporting them in their journey. They understand that their role is to guide, not to dominate, to serve, not to control. When we embrace leadership through service, we move away from the ego's need for recognition and instead focus on how we can make a positive impact on the lives of others. Leadership through service requires humility. It requires the willingness to step aside and let others shine. The ego wants to be at the center of attention, but humility allows us to recognize that leadership is not about being seen, but about lifting others up. A true leader is someone who understands that their success is intertwined with the success of those around them. They do not seek credit or praise for their work. They seek to empower others to succeed. Humility also allows leaders to acknowledge their mistakes and learn from them. The ego wants to protect itself from failure, but humility invites us to see failure as an opportunity for growth. When we lead with humility, we are willing to admit when we are wrong, to ask for help when needed, and to learn from the people we lead. This willingness to be vulnerable and open to feedback fosters trust and respect, creating an environment where others feel safe to contribute and grow. In addition to humility, leadership through service requires a deep sense of empathy. True leaders understand the needs, struggles, and aspirations of those they lead. They listen actively, offering support and encouragement without judgment. They do not see themselves as superior to others, but as part of a greater team working together toward a common goal. When we lead with empathy, we create strong connections and build a sense of community, where every individual feels valued and heard. Another key component of leadership through service is selflessness. The ego wants to be rewarded for its efforts, to gain recognition for the work it does. But true leaders understand that service is not about personal gain. They lead because they believe in a cause greater than themselves. They are driven by a sense of purpose and a desire to help others, not by the need to receive accolades or praise. Selflessness is the foundation of effective leadership because it fosters an environment where everyone's needs are met, where collaboration and cooperation are valued, and where the collective good is prioritized over individual recognition. Leadership through service also involves a willingness to put others first, even when it requires sacrifice. The ego seeks comfort, convenience, and praise, but true leaders are willing to make sacrifices for the benefit of others. They understand that leadership is not about taking the easy road, but about doing what is right, even when it is difficult. They are willing to step outside of their comfort zone to serve others, to make tough decisions, and to put the needs of their team above their own. This selflessness builds trust and respect, and it sets an example for others to follow. One of the most important aspects of leadership through service is the ability to inspire others to lead. A true leader does not seek to hoard power or control. They seek to empower others to step into their own leadership roles. They create opportunities for others to grow, to take on responsibility, and to make their own contributions. By doing so, They build a culture of collaboration where everyone feels empowered to lead in their own way. This type of leadership fosters creativity, innovation, and a sense of ownership, because everyone feels they have a stake in the outcome. Leadership through service is about being a guide, a mentor, and a support system for those around you. It is about putting the needs of others before your own, recognizing that true success comes from lifting others up, not from standing above them. The ego wants to be at the top, to be seen and praised, but true leaders know that leadership is not about being the center of attention. It is about helping others reach their potential, about creating an environment where everyone can thrive. True leadership is not defined by power or recognition, but by the impact we have on others. It is about serving with humility, empathy, and selflessness, and it is about empowering others to lead with us. When we lead through service, we not only elevate those around us, but also create a legacy of kindness, collaboration, and growth. This is the type of leadership that endures, the leadership that transcends the ego and leaves a lasting impact on the world. Chapter 9: Ego in Success. How it undermines lasting achievements. The pursuit of success, driven by the ego, often leads us down a path of temporary triumphs and fleeting rewards. Society teaches us to measure success by external markers for gain, recognition, power, or status. The ego thrives on these superficial measures of success, convincing us that they are the true indicators of our worth. It tells us that success is defined by how much we have, how high we climb, and how many people admire us. But this vision of success is fragile. It is dependent on external factors that are constantly changing, and it rarely provides lasting fulfillment. When we achieve success through the lens of the ego, we often find that it is not enough. No matter how much we accumulate, how many goals we reach, or how many people praise us, the ego always demands more. It is never satisfied because it is driven by an insatiable need for validation. The more we feed the ego with success, the more it grows, and the more it distances us from true happiness and inner peace. True success is not about external recognition or accolades. It is about fulfillment, growth, and alignment with our deeper purpose. When we chase success driven by the ego, we often sacrifice our values, relationships, and personal well-being in the process. We become so focused on achieving that we lose sight of what truly matters. The pursuit of more becomes a cycle that never ends, and we find ourselves constantly striving, but never truly content. Ego-driven success is often short-lived. The ego thrives on novelty and excitement, but it cannot sustain the deep satisfaction that comes from living authentically and with purpose. When we are focused solely on external success, we are disconnected from the things that bring true joy, meaningful relationships, personal growth, and a sense of inner peace. We chase after success, but once we achieve it, we find ourselves empty, as if the goalposts have simply moved further away. One of the main reasons ego-driven success is so unsustainable is that it is built on comparison. The ego constantly measures itself against others, believing that success is a zero-sum game. If someone else succeeds, the ego feels threatened. This mindset leads to unhealthy competition, jealousy, and a lack of collaboration. The more we compare ourselves to others, the more we diminish our own achievements and fail to recognize the value of our unique path. True success is not about being better than someone else. It is about being the best version of ourselves. The pursuit of success through the ego also causes us to disregard the importance of process over outcome. When we are driven by the desire to succeed at all costs, we are focused on the end result, rather than the journey. This mindset causes us to overlook the lessons we can learn along the way, the relationships we can build, and the growth that comes from embracing challenges. Success, when viewed through the ego's lens, becomes about winning, achieving, and accumulating, rather than learning, growing, and evolving. True success, in contrast, comes from a place of alignment with our values and purpose. It is about pursuing work and relationships that nourish us and contribute to the well-being of others. When we shift our focus from ego-driven success to a deeper sense of fulfillment, we find that our achievements become more meaningful and lasting. Instead of seeking external validation, we seek internal peace and satisfaction. The success that comes from within is not fleeting, but enduring, because it is grounded in authenticity, purpose, and growth. When we detach from the ego's need for external validation, we begin to understand that success is not defined by the world's standards, but by our own sense of fulfillment. We no longer seek approval or recognition from others because we have found peace in knowing that we are living in alignment with our truest selves. Success becomes not about achieving more, but about being true to ourselves, our values, and our purpose. This shift in perspective is not easy, as the world constantly reinforces the idea that success is about what we achieve and how we are seen. But when we begin to understand that true success comes from within, we start to free ourselves from the ego's grip. We start to live more authentically, making choices that align with our values and serve the greater good. The more we focus on the process rather than the outcome, the more fulfillment we find in the work itself. True success is about living with purpose, integrity, and authenticity. It is not about collecting achievements or external praise, but about living in alignment with our deepest values. It is about pursuing work that brings us joy, building relationships that nourish us, and contributing to the world in ways that align with our sense of meaning and purpose. This kind of success does not fade, it endures, because it is built on a foundation of authenticity, growth, and inner fulfillment. As we continue on our journey, let us redefine success not as the world defines it, but as we define it for ourselves. Let us shift our focus from ego-driven success to a deeper, more meaningful success that comes from living authentically, growing continuously, and contributing to the greater good. True success lies not in what we achieve, but in who we become along the way. Chapter 10. The Art of Detachment. Freeing yourself from the grip of ego. Ego is a powerful force, one that constantly seeks to define who we are, what we do, and how we are perceived. It drives us to seek recognition, approval, and validation from the outside world. It makes us believe that we must be perfect, successful, and admired in order to be worthy. But the truth is that the ego, in all its demands, creates a barrier between us and our true selves. The more we feed it, the more it controls us, drawing us further away from the peace and fulfillment that lie within. The key to true freedom lies in detachment, the ability to release the ego's grip and to live a life rooted in authenticity, purpose, and inner peace. Detachment is often misunderstood as a form of indifference or resignation, but it is, in fact, a profound act of freedom. To detach is not to abandon or neglect. It is to let go of the need to control, to prove, or to cling to external results. Detachment allows us to move through life without being tethered to the opinions of others, the fear of failure, or the desire for recognition. It is the ability to remain centered, regardless of the external circumstances, and to trust in the process of life itself. The ego thrives on attachment. It tells us that we must possess things, achievements, and status in order to feel complete. It convinces us that our worth is tied to what we have and what we accomplish. But the truth is that nothing external can define who we are. Our worth is inherent. It comes from within, not from the validation of others or the accumulation of material wealth. When we detach from the ego's constant demands, we free ourselves from the need to define our value by external measures. Detachment allows us to step out of the cycle of constant striving. The ego constantly pushes us to do more, to achieve more, and to be more than others. It tells us that we must keep moving, keep accumulating, keep proving ourselves. This constant chase for more keeps us trapped in a never-ending cycle of comparison and competition. But when we learn to detach, we can let go of this pressure. We no longer measure our worth by what we achieve or how we are seen. Instead, we focus on the journey, the process, and the growth that comes from within. Detachment is not about apathy or indifference. It is about releasing the need to control the outcome. It is about trusting that everything is unfolding as it should, without needing to force or manipulate the situation. When we detach from the need for validation, success, or control, we create space for true fulfillment. We no longer need to seek approval from others because we are secure in who we are. We are no longer attached to outcomes because we trust in the process of life itself. To detach from the ego's grip, we must first become aware of its presence. The ego often operates in the background, subtly influencing our thoughts, decisions, and actions. It shows up when we compare ourselves to others, when we seek validation, and when we are driven by fear or pride. The first step in detaching from the ego is to recognize when it is at work. Once we are aware of the ego's influence, we can choose to step back, to pause, and to choose a different path, one that is guided by authenticity, purpose, and inner peace. One of the most powerful ways to practice detachment is to embrace the concept of surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up or resigning ourselves to fate. It means letting go of the need to control. It means trusting that life will unfold as it is meant to, without our constant interference. Surrender allows us to release the tension, the pressure, and the struggle of trying to make things happen according to our will. When we surrender, we open ourselves to the flow of life, trusting that the right opportunities will come at the right time. Detachment also allows us to embrace impermanence. The ego clings to the idea that things must remain the same, that success and happiness must be permanent. But nothing in life is permanent. People change, circumstances shift, and even our own desires evolve over time. When we learn to detach from the need for permanence, we free ourselves from the fear of loss and change. We learn to appreciate the present moment for what it is, without clinging to it or trying to make it last forever. This acceptance of impermanence allows us to live fully in the here and now, without the constant worry about what will come next. Another key aspect of detachment is letting go of attachment to success. The ego often ties our sense of worth to our achievements, convincing us that we are only valuable if we succeed. But success is not the measure of our worth. It is the journey, the lessons, and the growth that matter most. Detaching from the outcome of success allows us to focus on the work itself, on the process of becoming, and on the joy of learning and evolving. When we are detached from success, We can pursue our passions and goals without fear, without the pressure of perfection, and with the freedom to enjoy the journey. Detachment also helps us navigate relationships with greater ease. The ego wants to possess, control, and define others in terms of our own desires and expectations. But true love, true connection, is not about possession. It is about freedom, trust, and mutual respect. When we detach from the need to control or manipulate relationships, we allow others to be themselves, free from our expectations. We learn to love without attachment, to support without possessiveness, and to give without expecting anything. In return, in the end, detachment is the key to true freedom. It allows us to live a life guided by inner peace, authenticity, and purpose. It frees us from the ego's constant demands for validation, success, and control. When we detach, we return to ourselves, to the stillness within, where we can find true fulfillment. The more we detach from the external world and its judgments, the more we connect with our true selves, and the greater the peace we find within. Detachment is not about withdrawing from the world or rejecting life. It is about living fully and authentically, free from the need to control or cling to outcomes. It is about trusting the flow of life, embracing impermanence, and finding fulfillment in the journey, not just in the destination. As we come to the end of this journey, let us take a moment to reflect on the path we have walked together, the lessons we have explored, from understanding the ego to embracing humility, from detaching from pride to recognizing the true nature of success, have all led us to a place of deeper self-awareness and peace. It is a peace that does not come from external validation or the fleeting recognition of others, but from within, from the quiet, unwavering knowledge that we are enough, just as we are. The ego, in all its forms, has only one aim: to create separation, to make us believe that we are different, that we are separate, that we must compete and prove ourselves to others. But in truth, we are all connected. We are part of something far greater than ourselves, and our worth is not determined by what we accomplish, how we are seen, or how much we accumulate. Our worth is inherent, rooted in our humanity, in our capacity to learn, to grow, to love, and to serve. The journey we have taken together has been one of stripping away the illusions created by the ego. It has been a journey of returning to our true selves, to the quiet place within where we can find peace, clarity, and purpose. This journey has not been about achieving perfection, but about embracing our imperfections, understanding our limitations, and recognizing that growth is a continual process, one that never ends. We have learned that true success is not measured by accolades or achievements, but by the quality of our intentions, the integrity of our actions, and the depth of our connection to others. We have learned that humility, service, and authenticity are the true markers of a meaningful life. We have learned that obstacles are not barriers but opportunities, that failure is not defeat but growth, and that silence is not emptiness but a gateway to clarity. Now, as we step forward from this place, let us carry with us the lessons we have learned. Let us remember that the ego will always be there, whispering in our ears, seeking to lead us astray, but we do not need to follow its call. We have the power to choose a different path, one of humility, of service, of authenticity, and of peace. The journey towards true success is not one of competition or comparison, but one of connection to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. As we move forward, let us do so with courage, knowing that we are enough, that we are worthy, and that true fulfillment comes not from what we achieve, but from who we become along the way. Let us embrace the process of growth, of learning, of becoming, and trust that the path we are walking is the right one for us. True peace comes not from achieving more or accumulating more, but from releasing the need to prove ourselves and simply being who we are. This is the journey of silent abundance, the journey of letting go of the ego's demands and embracing the peace that comes from within. It is a journey that never ends, but one that leads us to deeper fulfillment, deeper connection, and deeper peace. May you walk this path with courage, with grace, and with an open heart. May you always remember that you are enough, that you are worthy, and that your true success is found in the quiet, humble moments of growth, learning, and service to others. The journey towards true peace is not external, but internal, and it begins with the quiet recognition of your own inherent worth.